He's having a seizure. What have you done? I shouted as my brother-in-law, David, convulsed on the playground's rubber matting. The HOA president, Maureen Fletcher, stood over him, a taser clutched in her manicured hand. My 8-year-old autistic nephew, Ethan, screamed in terror, covering his ears as his father twitched uncontrollably. He was threatening me, Maureen declared, her designer sunglasses glinting in the afternoon sun. I was enforcing the rules. Do you know who I am? I'm the president of this HOA. Do you know who I am? I shot back, already dialing 911. I'm Justice Edward Marshall of the United States Supreme Court, and you just tossed my family. The color drained from her face as the taser slipped from her grip. In that moment, she realized she'd made the gravest mistake of her entitled life. 3 days earlier, I'd arrived at my sister Claire's new suburban home in Cedar Ridge Estates, fresh from my Supreme Court confirmation. Watch out for our HOA president, Claire had warned. She's targeting Ethan because of his autism. I never imagined how far this power-hungry woman would go to enforce her discriminatory rules. But Maureen Fletcher was about to face a lesson in justice, one that didn't care about her designer purse or HOA title. The Cedar Ridge Estates playground was pristine, new equipment, soft rubber ground cover, and shady trees. Ethan bolted for the swings, his joyful squeals as David pushed him warming my heart. I noticed a stack of violation notices in David's pocket. When I asked, he sighed. Maureen fined us $200 last week because Ethan was too loud during therapy. We've had his pediatrician write letters explaining his needs, but she doesn't care. He showed me the violations on his phone. Special needs swing set not approved, $150. Excessive noise during unauthorized activity, $200. Improper ground cover in sensory area, $175. Each was signed with Maureen's florid signature and threats of property liens. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I asked. Claire looked away. You were in confirmation hearings. This seemed minor compared to that. But it wasn't minor, it was blatant discrimination against a child with disabilities. 3 days into my visit, I saw Maureen's harassment firsthand. We were eating lunch in the backyard when she appeared at the fence, camera in hand. Excuse me, she snapped. That canopy over Ethan's sensory area exceeds height restrictions by 2 inches. Ethan covered his ears at her sharp tone. And that's another noise violation. He's humming to self-regulate, I explained calmly. It's part of his autism. Maureen's eyes narrowed. I don't care what it's called. Rules are rules. Your sister signed the HOA agreement. She pointed at Claire. 3 violations this week means you're facing the board Monday. After she left, Ethan stayed distressed for hours. Claire cried. It's constant. She follows him, recording if he makes any sound. That evening, I met Mrs. Liu, an 80-year-old neighbor. You're Claire's brother, the judge, she whispered, glancing around. Your family isn't the only one Maureen targets. She described how Maureen had banned her grandson with Down syndrome from visiting, claiming his appearance was disturbing. The Patels were fined for ethnic cooking odors. Mr. Garcia got violations when his extended family visited. She targets anyone different, Mrs. Liu said. No one fights back because she controls the board. The next day, David showed me a certified letter from Maureen demanding they remove Ethan's therapy equipment within 48 hours or face $300 daily fines. We can't afford this, Claire said, voice breaking. But Ethan needs it. Let me help, I offered. This is discriminatory and illegal. David shook his head. She'll escalate if we fight. She carries a taser and brags about handling troublemakers. A taser? This was beyond HOA tyranny. I learned Maureen had been president for 3 years, boosting property values, but also complaints. She selectively enforced rules. Golf-playing retirees could be noisy, but disabled kids couldn't make a peep. She'd driven 3 families with special needs children out through relentless harassment. Tomorrow's the community play date, Claire said. Ethan loves it, but Maureen always forces us to leave. Not this time, I said. I'll be there. Saturday morning was perfect. Ethan was thrilled for the playground, especially the swings. They helped my body feel calm, he explained, his insight touching. We arrived to find the playground empty except for Maureen and 2 board members, clipboards ready, watching us like predators. Remember, I told David and Claire, you have every legal right to be here. Don't let her provoke you. Ethan ran to the swings, his face glowing. I have a bad feeling, Claire whispered. Maureen began snapping photos, her expression grim. I knew then she'd come to confront us. As Ethan swung higher, laughing, I saw the board members' faces soften, seeing a child's joy. But Maureen's hardened. She adjusted her designer jacket, gripped her pink clipboard, and marched toward the swings, heels clicking aggressively. Here we go, David muttered, moving closer to Ethan. I braced myself. 20 years in law had taught me to spot someone itching for a fight, and Maureen Fletcher, HOA dictator, was ready for one. I didn't yet know how far she'd go. Excuse me, Maureen called, her voice sharp. Those swings are for ages 5 to 7 only. Your son needs to get off. I scanned the playground, no age restriction signs. David slowed Ethan's swing. He's 8, Maureen, he said calmly. And no one else is using them. She pulled out her phone, taking pictures. Section 12 of the HOA guidelines states equipment is age-restricted for safety. Ethan tensed, sensing conflict, his hands flapping to self-soothe. 5 more minutes, please? David asked. He needs transition time. Maureen's eyes flashed. This is the problem with your family. You think rules don't apply. She stepped closer, voice rising. This is a community space, not a special needs facility. Her cruelty boiled my blood, but before I could act, Ethan showed distress, covering his ears and rocking. It's okay, buddy, David said, using practiced calming techniques. See, this is what I mean. Maureen snapped, pointing at Ethan. This inappropriate behavior disturbs others. No other families were there, just Maureen and her silent allies. David stood between her and Ethan. My son isn't inappropriate. He's reacting to your harassment. Maureen stepped closer, inches from David. I'm not harassing anyone. I'm enforcing rules you agreed to. Ethan's distress grew, his high-pitched hum starting to self-regulate. Maureen's face twisted. That noise stops now. It's a noise ordinance violation. David took a deep breath. We're leaving, but back up and give us space. Instead, Maureen grabbed David's arm. Don't walk away when I'm talking. What happened next was a blur. As David gently freed his arm, Maureen pulled a taser from her purse. I warned the board about this, she shouted, lunging and triggering it against David's side with a crackle. David collapsed, convulsing on the matting. Ethan's scream pierced the air, raw with terror. I rushed to Ethan, pulling him away as he fought to reach his dad. Call 911. I yelled to the stunned board members. Maureen stood over David, taser in hand, chest heaving. He was threatening me, she said, voice faltering. I was defending myself. I dialed 911, cradling Ethan. A man's been assaulted with a taser at Cedar Ridge Estates playground, I told the dispatcher. We need police and an ambulance now. Maureen's confidence wavered as she saw me call. He was aggressive, she insisted, looking to her companions. They stepped back, wanting no part of it. Ethan rocked, tears streaming. It's okay, buddy, I whispered. Help's coming for your dad. David stirred, groaning. Maureen dropped the taser, retreating. He shouldn't have resisted, she muttered, her authority fading. Sirens wailed as I helped David sit up. Ethan, he mumbled, reaching for his son. Is Ethan okay? Police arrived, followed by an ambulance. Maureen launched into her story. This man violated playground rules and got aggressive, she said, gesturing wildly. I had to defend myself. An officer turned to me, notepad ready. And you are? Until then, I'd been Uncle Edward, focused on my family. Now I needed credibility. I'm Edward Marshall, Ethan's uncle and David's brother-in-law. I saw everything. Tell me what happened, the officer said. I nodded, voice steady. Ms. Fletcher approached us, demanded Ethan stop swinging, citing an unposted age restriction, used discriminatory language about his autism, grabbed my brother-in-law when he tried to leave, and tossed him when he freed his arm. My clarity caught Maureen off guard. She wasn't used to such articulate resistance. That's not, she sputtered, but I continued. Multiple witnesses saw it, I said, nodding to the board members, whose uneasy faces spoke volumes. Paramedics tended to David while another officer spoke gently to Ethan, still shaken. Maureen tried to regain control. Do you know who I am? She told the officer. I'm the president of the Cedar Ridge Estates HOA. I have the right to enforce our rules. The officer stayed professional. Ma'am, HOA authority doesn't extend to assaulting residents, regardless of rules. Maureen flushed. You don't understand. These people have been problems since they moved in. The child is disruptive. They've modified their property without permission. I cut in. Are you referring to medical accommodations for Ethan's autism, protected under the Fair Housing Act and ADA? Maureen glared. Who do you think you are? A lawyer. The officer glanced between us. Sir, may I ask your profession? I paused. I'd meant to keep my new role quiet during this visit, but the stakes had changed. I'm a federal judge, I said. Recently appointed to the United States Supreme Court. Silence fell. Maureen's clipboard clattered to the ground, her face ashen. The officer's composure slipped briefly, surprise flickering. I see, Your Honor, he said, standing straighter. We'll need full statements from everyone. Maureen stammered, Supreme Court? You can't, that's impossible. A second officer approached, uneasy. Chief asks if Justice Marshall prefers to give his statement at the station. Not out here, he said quietly. Maureen's realization hit. She tossed the brother-in-law of a Supreme Court justice while targeting his autistic nephew. I didn't know, she whispered. How was I supposed to know who they were related to? It shouldn't matter, I said evenly. No one deserves this treatment, regardless of their family. At the station, Maureen's story collapsed. Her taser was unregistered, with no permit. The playground's age restrictions weren't in any HOA guidelines. The board members admitted Maureen had targeted special needs families before, saying they lowered property values. She's been trying to force them out, one confessed, avoiding my gaze. Maureen faced charges of assault, carrying an unregistered weapon, and violating civil rights laws. But the real shift came from the community. Neighbors, long silenced by Maureen's reign, found their voices. An emergency HOA meeting packed the community center. Residents shared stories of harassment, targeting families of color, elderly neighbors, and those with disabilities. The pattern was undeniable. Maureen preyed on the vulnerable. By the meeting's end, the entire HOA board resigned. A new interim board was elected, tasked with inclusive governance. 6 months later, I returned for Ethan's birthday. Cedar Ridge Estates had transformed. The playground now had inclusive equipment for all abilities, and a sensory garden offered a calm space for overwhelmed kids. Maureen's legal woes mounted: criminal charges, a financial fraud probe, and civil lawsuits from multiple families. She moved away after the court ordered her to repay every discriminatory fine she'd issued. Uncle Edward, Ethan called, tugging my hand. Everyone gets to play here now. That's the best rule. From a child's wisdom, even a Supreme Court justice could learn. True justice isn't just in courtrooms, it's in building communities where everyone belongs. Maureen's tyranny was over, Cedar Ridge Estates was reborn, and Ethan's laughter on the swings rang as a testament to a community made whole.